Hey everybody, welcome into the Real Family Business Podcast, where our family business helps your family business. Before we get going today, we were having a debate that we wanted to kind of, get out on air, which is, Keith, it has something to do with coffee, which we're all big coffee drinkers today. Mm-hmm. I'm on water right now because I've already had 2 cups. I'm going to get a third one here in a minute, but give us the debate, the thing that sparked the debate.
The secret to good coffee is good water. Yeah,
and I think, so I will agree with you on that, because depending on what water I use, my coffee definitely has a different taste to it. But I think what we were saying is
it's a secret. I mean, good water cannot save bad coffee.
Right. It's like it sets the ceiling for it, possibly.
Well, before we got going, our producer was trying to argue that he had made a good cup of Folgers, to which Daniel succinctly
I don't think that exists.
You pile drive that comment.
There's no Folgers Reserve Roastery.
It's not even that bad.
Avenue.
So here at our office in College Station, we have a huge coffee bar where we do lattes, Americanos, all of cappuccinos, whatever. He wanted to, for the drip coffee, wanted to go switch it out from our specialty roast to Folgers the other day. He tried to convince Logan, and Logan was like, "No, that's okay. I'll stick with the good stuff."
Well, but my argument to that
we're practicing for the recession, is what he's saying.
But my argument to that is, if you're using high quality water, you can get the max of whatever that coffee's potential is out of that coffee. So I'm not saying that I would pick a cup of Folgers coffee, but if I had to have a cup of Folgers coffee, I would sure rather make sure it's made with really good water.
Maybe if these tariffs get bad enough, we'll switch away from HEB. But for right now, we're going to stick with the HEB specialty blend. Houston blend is what I think we go with.
What would Starbucks or Dutch Bros or those guys say? I mean, you can go to Pilot Truck Stop and get you a 79-cent cup of coffee. I'm pretty sure that's not filtered water, and I'm pretty sure that's not even Folgers grade coffee.
I don't know. I think they just give you something extra at Pilot or at Buc-ee's, and they don't even charge you for it.
Here's what I'm wondering, though. I think you've ever been to Starbucks that's not good and one that is good?
Sure.
Maybe it's the water.
Could be.
Could be. All right. Speaking of balance, the balance of coffee and water, that's the whole focus of today's episode. We're going to talk a little bit about work-life balance. I think as a family business, one of the things that we've worked on and that we still work through every once in a while is that balance of, when do you turn it off? What does it mean to be committed? But then also, what does it mean to be overcommitted? There's a really fine line and a balance between that. So you guys have a lot more experience than I do. Y'all tell me what you think.
Well, let me tee this one off. This is interesting. Back in the dark ages when I was in grad school, I did a research project, and this is circa 2000, and we were looking at that point the evolution of technology into the modern workplace. How prior, up until the late 90s, for all of time prior to that, if you couldn't take work home with the ease that a mobile device or a laptop or something like that would provide. You didn't have wireless Wi-Fi, stuff like that everywhere. So the contention back then, the debate was, do those types of mobile devices violate the psychological contract of a family, that when a mom or dad gets home from work, they're mom or dad? And I think that debate has that's now 25 years in the rearview mirror, but I think it's still a valid question. What are the expectations for your home life, of your work life? Where do those meet? Where does one start? Where does one end? Do they start? Do they end? And I think these are challenges that, we work a lot on trying to, the way I say it is we like to weave who we are into what we do. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a whole lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
I mean, in a certain sense, all of us here are always working, right? There's a certain background level that your brain is always processing a work problem or thinking about some piece of information you learned that day, and it'll just pop up in the middle of the night that you realize something that's going to be a solution that you needed. So in a certain sense, you're always working. But in the kind of knowledge work that we're in the kind of relationship-based work that we're in, hours worked is rapidly declining as the most accurate measure of productivity. It just doesn't work that way. It's about what you get done. Some days that's going to be 16 hours. Some days it might be 4. I mean, there's famous books about that. It just depends. I think you have to measure yourself by results more than you do by, effort sometimes. But managing burnout's a big deal too. If we burn out, then we're useless to everybody.
So You said there's a famous book about working half of a workday.
Yeah.
Imagine that. People like that kind of a book.
Yeah, I know. But again, you got to measure by results.
Yeah, no, you do have
do.
to measure by results. So, I was trying to think how we would go about this concept because it is tough. And I don't know. I think that you have to keep things in perspective. I've always tried to do, just be present wherever I am. So whenever I'm in a meeting, very rarely do I tell somebody, hey, I have to leave at this time, right? There has to be something very specific for me on that. I just want to be present. So I try to carry that home whenever I'm at home. My wife would say I probably do a poor job of that, but I try to do it at home. I try to do it at work. And I think that when you enjoy what you do, there's a certain piece to you where it's not a job. It is a career. It's fulfilling. It's something you want to go out and achieve. So let's do this. Let's start on both sides of this, conversation. And let's kind of meet in the middle as we wrap it up as to kind of where we think people should be. So, if you're running a family business or a small business and you're just thinking about, hey, what does work-life balance look like? Let's talk about it on both sides of what it looks like for each of us practically. So let's start on like the undercommitted side, right? Because there's undercommitted and overcommitted and then just the proper amount of this, which is balance. So on the undercommitted side, I think what drives that and what is really the problem with being too balanced to the point where you're not necessarily successful because you don't put enough effort into the job.
I personally think that the ultimate measuring stick is performance. Because performance, there's performance and there's the predicates to performance and there's antecedents of performance, right? Of performance, and it's not like the old days of Upton Sinclair and the jungle, the Industrial Revolution.
It's a good reference.
People are going.
I'm impressed by that reference.
Well, people are going in to the warehouse or the factory and they're working this many days, this many hours, and getting this. There's this amount of result for this many hours. I think when you're in the family business environment, because you're wearing so many hats, the nature of what you're doing, the nature of your work, it's not possible to measure in that way. So I think people on the light end maybe are not understanding, they're not internalizing what the correlation is between what they put in and how that correlates to the performance of the business that they're in.
I think you got to ask yourself what your stakes are. If you're a business leader, your stakes are pretty high. It's everything that you've built all the time. But if you have a family, your stakes are pretty high there too. You can't be wagering one against the other. Yep. So they have to be interwoven with each other. Yep. You don't, if you have kids, you don't stop being a dad when you go to work.
That's a fact.
You don't. Everything that you're doing informs everything else. The idea that, you just, at 5 o'clock or whatever, you stop being one thing or the other. At 8 a.m., you stop being one thing or the other. I don't think really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think we should spend more time in this conversation on the overcommitted side because, again, I think that's where most
relatable.
Look, because here's the thing: if you're on the bottom side of this, I think what both of you were saying is look, you're probably not committed at all, and therefore you're really not motivated by where you're going in your career because you have to have productivity. But you have to put hours in to get that productivity a lot of times. And sometimes that means working even more. And I will say, I think that's something that's really nice about the younger generation. Like, it's almost like this, like we're coming back to, we want to work again because you understand, like you're starting at a place of like, Keith, how long have you been working just in general?
30 plus years.
So you have multiple decades on me in terms of wisdom and experience and things like the only way for me to make that up is to work. Like I have to go try to get experiences and go through things and get pieces of information. And so I think if you're on that bottom side, it's really about just looking for where you're trying to go. It goes back to a couple of episodes in the past about just, a vision and like, where are you trying to go in your career? And I think it's a proper understanding of where, like Daniel was saying, your family and the business fit together. It's not I'm doing work now and I'm with family the other time. It's a balance of those two things together because they work together.
But let me take something that you're saying there, and this goes to I don't want to say overworking, but working to the maximum degree that you possibly can. I think there is a neat element when you have balance in your life personally and professionally. When you're at home, your family knows that you take pride and that you love what you do. And so it's not can I be with my family? It's not a binary choice. I have to be with my family, or I have to be working. I can be with my family and I can be working. And sure, there's times when I lean more one way, lean more the other. But that aspect of family business, of entrepreneurship, I think is perhaps one of the best things that it's I can say from experience, it's much harder to strike that I love what I do. What I do is who I am. Who I am is both at work and at home. It's much harder to thread all those together in the corporate world than it is in the family business environment. In the family business environment,
for sure.
that's one of the perspectives that we have that is such a blessing.
That's what I was going to say. I was just going to say, I think if you really love what you do and it is a career, then it's going to be easy for you to be committed. It's going to be easy for you to try to balance all these things and go through this, because you're going to, it's just it's not who you are. Let's be very clear on that. Like, work for all of us is not necessarily who we are, but it is a piece of that. I would say we're crazy if we don't think we get some type of joy out of solving things and bringing on new people and growing. Like, that is definitely a piece of what we do. And because of that, it drives you to be committed. And so if you're not that way in your job, maybe it's because it's a job and not a career.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not tied closely enough to the goals of who you're working for, who you're working with, then yeah, you're going to want to forget that after 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. If you're a manager and you have employees who are just checking out at the end of the day, well, that means that they don't really feel like they're part of the team. They don't really feel like what they're doing is moving themselves forward or the team forward. Yep. If they're just spinning their wheels, they've got to see some results. That's a big thing to me. Psychologically, I do much better when I can see wins, when I can look in the past and say, hey, we've done these things, they've accomplished good stuff, we've moved forward. If I feel like I'm spinning my wheels, then yeah, I start to feel like I'm checking out. That's a really hard thing to, if someone's in an entry-level position, to communicate that to them. But that's kind of the challenge for us, I think.
I think that's an interesting point, though, because I think a lot of times people who maybe are not happy in their jobs, they're looking at the present and saying, how come I'm not successful? And the answer is pretty simple. It's like, you don't put enough time in the past. And so you're not successful
you haven't done
today.
it long enough.
But I think for people who are successful.
But what is the definition of successful?
Yes. Okay. So that's fair. But I'm saying, like, a person
that's relative. Yeah.
In this example, successful is somebody who enjoys their job to the point in which they want to be committed.
I wasn't trying to tag
But somebody like what Daniel just said is, they don't look to the present and say, am I successful? They look to the past and say, have we won? Because if we have, then that's going to keep motivating me to work hard right now, so that way whenever I get to the next step, I can look backwards and say, hey, that's been awesome. I think sometimes we want like success right now, and that's not how it works. I can tell you, in a company like ours, we very rarely look at today and say, man, we've done this really awesome thing. We look at the past and say, hey, that's been great, but how are we going to get to the next point? And it pushes you forward. But a lot of that comes back to, it comes back to awareness. I think to balance these two things, you have to have awareness. And it's not like a thing that you can do every day where you just stay straight down the middle. If you're going to have hills, you're going to have valleys. And awareness is the only thing going to bring you up from a valley, and the only thing going to take you down from a hill, in terms of like you're spending too much time one place or the other.
And I think you've got to develop a strong sense of self-awareness, because if you don't know who you are, what your identity is, you're going to have a hard time committing to anything, whether that's your family, whether that's your job. If you just feel like you're spinning, it's not going to work. I think being aware of yourself, what you actually want, is a big deal.
What you want, and not just what you're good at. Because I've seen a lot of
that's so different.
I've seen a lot of people who are good in a certain environment, but they're not experiencing the satisfaction or the intrinsic rewards that accompany what I would personally define as meaningful work. I mean, I know for me personally, my faith informs my philosophy. My philosophy is evident in my work ethic and in my work, and in the success, to whatever varying degrees, that I'm able to contribute to that. And I know that I think it's a similar pattern for other folks. And again, that's a unique feature of family business.
Yeah, I agree. And the other unique feature of family business is you never turn it off. Right?
Yes.
Because it's just a part of it. You're just constantly striving to get better, because there's so many things that we were talking about this the other day. There's no book that says, hey, you're a family business. We've studied all of these family businesses, and this is how you do it. No. Now, with big corporations, like, they have lots of case studies and ways to handle all kinds of things. Now, this is still their business, and they have to be, strategic with it. But like, it is very unique for a family business to navigate the waters.
When I had that point, self-awareness wise, hit me straight between the eyes. A couple of years ago, there was another smaller family business that was trying to figure out how to do some of the things that our family business is doing. And I had just arrived in Warsaw, Poland. My wife travels for her work, and we had just checked into Warsaw, Poland. It was like midnight over there, and you sent me a text that hey, something changed.
You're making me look bad on the podcast. I text you at midnight on your
well,
vacation.
no, I mean, no, it was like,
No, it was like work hours here.
it was like,
but in
we're like
Poland,
we're like 8 hours behind here. So you're just only like 5.
Okay,
it's like
so I'm
5,
good.
6,
Yeah.
It's still early evening here. You're just.
I mean, he will do that, but
He's just finishing
this
up dinner.
time he didn't do it.
Just finishing up dinner, and he sends me this note. Hey, this thing just happened, and anyway, that was the impetus. So I'm like, I'm jet lagged, and all of a sudden, man, the brain fog just lifted, and I've got to call this guy to let him know, and we got to talk. And so I called him from Poland. No, we were ahead there. Anyway, it was I guess it was even. I called him, and the deal got done. But I thought, here I am on the other side of the world in Eastern Europe, in Warsaw, and Jackson sends me a note, and like, oh. It was fun because it was satisfying because it was that whole thing you're saying.
Yep.
When who you are is evident in what you do, when what you do harmonizes with who you are, when you love what you do, when you love the people. I think that's an important point too. The people that you do,
I agree with that.
people you do it with.
Wouldn't know about that.
Says this guy.
Yeah. So when we think about the other side, and let's just make it personal with us. So like obviously, I think the three of us, we try to be very high performing individuals. Like we know that as a leadership team of our company, we have to be leading from the front. Like we can't just say do as I say, but not as I do. Right? We try to mimic that, and I see that from our team in emails at midnight and texts. All hours of the day, like, hey, how are we going to solve this problem? And when there's a problem, people jump on it immediately. I mean, we were on a call at 6 a.m. last week trying to figure something out, right? And so I think there's times where you're going to have that. How do y'all handle a schedule like that? How do you create balance in your life? Because it's very easy to become overcommitted when you love what you do.
I think you have to zoom out a little bit and decide at what scale you're being balanced.
Yep.
If you take an individual day, you're going to have individual days that are not balanced. You're going to have individual days where you are working from sunup to sundown and past it, and you're just going to have to deal with that. But then you need to have days that are the opposite. You need to have days that balance those out. So I think a lot of people are trying to think on too micro a scale about this. Don't think about 8 to 5 today. I'm at the office from 8 to 5, and then I go home and I'm with my family from 6 to 8, and then I go to the gym or whatever for an hour, and then don't think on that micro scale. Zoom out a little bit. Say, okay, for 3 days I'm going to have to really buckle down and do 45 hours of work in these 3 days, and then the next week pedal back a little bit and let your mind recover and don't lean into that burnout so much. Zoom out to a month scale or a 2-month scale or a year scale and say, how am I balancing myself across this time period?
Let me chime in on that. So, as a father, whenever you become a parent, one of the things you learn is kids spell love, Time, right? Mm-hmm. But the same could be said for a successful career. You have to invest Time to be good at what you do, but in the same way that you have a relationship with your children, I think when you're performing at a high level in your career, you're investing time, but it's not just like you wouldn't. If you lock me in a room with my kids for 3 straight days, I mean, there's going to come a point where we're sort of, you're
going to throw one of them out the window.
There's a give and a take.
They're both going to throw him out the window.
They're going to throw him out the window. Yes.
If they're watching,
this is Thunderdome in this situation.
They know that's truth. But anyway, my point is there's a rhythm.
Yes.
There's a give and a take, and once you start performing, you got to test you press the throttle to find out, am I over, am I pushing too hard, am I not pushing hard enough? And once you find it and you see the ensuing performance, back to that word, then I think that's where you begin to find the feel, okay, this is the range where I need to be, this is the hot spot. And then the longer you do that, I think the more effective you are at modulating the competing demands.
I'm twice as productive the week after I decompress for a day or two than otherwise. Easily.
So here's the thing. I think the analogy I would use in this is so I'm a big cruise control driver. Like I have to do it everywhere I go, like all the time. Like 30 miles per hour in a neighborhood doesn't matter. I'm cruise control because I don't like measuring how fast I'm going myself. I hate doing it. I'd rather just not think about that. But I think if you were to take it off cruise control and you did not have that as an option, because that doesn't exist in this scenario, sometimes you're going to have to speed up because you're going a little too slow. Not super slow, but a couple miles per hour below the speed limit. Sometimes you're going to go a little bit above. And depending on your personality, it's going to be one way or the other. And I think that's the same analogy for balance in work. It's like Daniel said, y'all both said it. you're going to have times where you're pressing the throttle more because of something, and sometimes you're pulling it back a little bit because of something else. But I think that I know we've been talking about the word balance the whole time. I don't even think that word is necessarily the right word for this, because I think what it comes down to is prioritization. It's not about balance. Because you're never going to have balance. You're going to have to prioritize things. Sometimes you prioritize the kids, because guess what? They got a game, and that is number one priority today. But other times you have a project, and that is number one priority today. And I will tell you this, I think, and I've already seen this, my daughter's 3. She knows I work hard. She knows I get up and go to work. That's how she knows that. And that's good. I want her to know that, because ultimately, long time from now, I would love her to marry somebody who does that same thing, that was willing to work hard for their family. And I think that what we're doing sometimes when we try to create this perfect balance is we're creating this utopia that does not exist. And what we should be teaching our families is, no, you prioritize. You never prioritize incorrectly, but sometimes there's going to be priorities over here and sometimes over there. And I think when you do that, it creates a certain level of balance, but it's never perfect and never lasts too long. So don't create some utopia you're never going to hit.
Yeah, the perfect allegory. I love this. It's the old story. And the older I get, the more I come to appreciate this story. It's a young guy and an old guy getting into a wood chopping contest, right? The young guy's, oh man, he's ripped, he's buff. Coming out of the gym, he's like, man, I'm gonna smoke this guy. And this guy's like, man, I'm 60, 70 years old. I've been doing this my whole life. Like, come on. So they start chopping wood, and every hour the old guy stops to catch his breath, and he's sitting down, and the young guys are just going, not even slowing down, not catching a beat. They get to the end of the day, they measure the wood. The old guy stopped every hour, catch his breath, and they measure the wood. And the young guy's got 3 times as much wood chopped as the young guy. And the young guy's like, what in the world? How did you do that? And he goes, son, yeah. He goes, you took a break every hour. He goes, yeah, every time I took a break, I was sharpening my blade, And,
Yep.
and it's just it's an allegory, but it's to your point. There's what you do, there's how you do it,
Yep.
and it's I think balance is too cliche. I think it is.
Yeah,
priorities.
and even the framing of the question kind of presupposes this conflict between work and life.
I agree.
You're assuming that they're in conflict with each other at the beginning. We should be trying to make work and life that complement each other, that fit together, that build each other up, instead of being in opposition to each other. So maybe even work-life integration is the right way to put it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as we close down, I think the reality is this: when you're in a family business, you're going to have those days where you just have to put the hours in.
Yeah.
Do you need to do that to, and not prioritize other things that are important in your life? The answer is no. And I think that goes back to our values, right? Like, we all understand when somebody has something go on. It's like, yeah, yesterday is funny. Like, a couple of our C-suite members, they popped out for an hour. You know why? It's because their kids had basketball practice, right? They're not practicing for a game. They're not playing summer ball. They're just practicing. But that is an important priority for them. But you know what? Both of them, they probably, if I had to guess, worked 12, 14 hours yesterday, right? So I think the reality is it is one of those things where, as a family business, there are sacrifices you're going to have to make. And they're made on both sides constantly. But I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to teach your family ultimately, because that is a more important priority than work. You're trying to teach them what it looks like to have a fulfilling life in general.
Yep.
How they complement each other, how to work hard, how to do the things that we go to school, we spend all this time and effort trying to get a degree so that way we go get a job. And it's like, a lot of things point to that, right? So it's not a bad thing at the end of the day when you work hard. I think it's a very successful thing, but you also have to put those meters on it. You have to be aware, and you have to throttle forward and backwards. I mean, the thing that I wanted to end with was, there's a study that I saw about stress. Because I think a lot of times that's where this conversation comes in, is like, oh, I'm stressed, so what's my work-life balance? And basically, the long story short, the way the study ended up was, the people who died earliest were the people who had stress and basically were upset by it. Like, they couldn't mentally comprehend it. The people who lived longest had stress and were basically like, yeah, that's part of life. It's fine. And they dealt with it. And then the people in the middle were people who didn't have stress, which I don't know who those people are, but they dealt with it or didn't. And what it really showed me, and what it came back to, was this. It's very simple. It's your mindset. It's how you look at everything. And I think you have to have a positive mindset. Sure, you're going to go through bad days. Sure, you're going to have days where you work too much. Sure, you're going to have days where you didn't get enough done, and family things popped up. That's what life's about. Just put your mind to it and get it done.
Yep. If you're not stressed, you're not growing.
Put yourself in a position to love what you do, who you do it with, and who you do it for.
Yep.
Those are 3 very different categories.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we'll see you back here next time on The Real Family Business. But between now and then, make sure your coffee is good, or your water's good, or your coffee won't be.
Hey, get that water right.